Hello everybody, welcome back to part 2 of printing on a large format jelly plate. Now on your screen, first of all I'd like to show you a very handy gadget that I have. It's a silicone mat, and for those of you who don't have the luxury of an artist's work table, this will protect whatever surface you're working on. I got this from Amazon. I'll put the link in the description below, and in case you're using your desk or your dining table or kitchen table to do artwork, I strongly suggest having the silicone mat to protect your table from scratches and stains. And I'm going to use this. This is my cutting mat, and show you how I cut my paper stencils. This is just regular copy paper, something very easy to find, and the shapes I'm going to use for stencils are going to be either ovals or circles. So I'm going to use my fat marker and start tracing these shapes. And this will be kind of a theme where I make use of these shapes. And sometimes they can be reused depending on what happens to these stencils. Sometimes they get coated with a nice coat of acrylic paint that they become parts of my collage. Okay, that's it for the oval shapes. So instead of using a pair of scissors, I'll just use a snap-off razor blade. This is much easier to use, and I'm not going to do anything fancy. Just going to score the paper to the general shape, and so this cutting board is very important because it saves the cutting surface from any scratches. If you do a lot of cutting, because I like to make my own stencils instead of buying them. Well, first of all, the ready-made stencils can get expensive. I think they're something like $15 a pop. So I make my own. So here's one. because I find that when you make abstract compositions, I find the most effective compositions are the ones with the simplest forms, not so much the busy forms. There's another one. And sometimes the negative form is useful as well, so I save those. And I'm basing this composition on another work, which I will provide the link to an older video about collage on a monoprint. And I find that these rounded shapes are very effective, especially for stencils. Okay, that's it for the oval shapes. So I'm going to put these aside and use them after I roll the ink on the plate. And you'll see what I mean. It's hard to explain in words. It's best to watch. And I think the best way to learn is to watch and remember. Okay, that's it for the... And then I also will do some angular striped forms. Okay, so between these circles and ovals and these stylized stripes, I have lots to work with, and at a very low cost and a very simple process that anyone can do this. You just have to be careful with the razor blade. I've been cutting stencils for a very long time, so I guess I do it fairly quickly, but for someone who's new to this type of tool, it's best to do it very slowly, just to avoid accidents, or use a pair of scissors. So okay, I will be right back, and I will show you the inking process in my next segment. Okay, I'm back from a short break, and I have my plate all cleaned up and ready. And let me show you the last print that I did. I'm going to lay the paper stencils on the plate to create a second layer. So if this is the image right side up, I'm going to place the circular shapes like so. And so I have to think of this backwards in reverse, because whatever goes on the gel plate, once it's pulled, it becomes the reverse of what you see. So I have to think that way, kind of think in a mirror image, and it's a little tricky. Sometimes I use a sheet of acetate as a guide, but this is just 3 basic shapes. So I'm going to remember. So this is going to be here. This will be here. This will be here. Okay, I'm just going to press. Now, since the gel plate is sticky like tape, by pressing the paper stencil, I'm just making sure it doesn't slip when I'm putting the paint. Okay, so this is going to be on standby. And the colors I'm going to use, this is aqua green, this is a green gray, and this is Arctic. So I have a whole mix of brands here. I've got Lukas, and then I have Artist Loft, which you can buy from Blick, and this is Liquitex. So I'm going to start by placing some this gray, green gray. And some aqua green. And a little of this Arctic. Okay. And I'm going to use a relatively small brayer because I'm going to work around the shapes. And I'm going to be careful not to move the stencil. Yeah, sometimes when I use the brayer that is too big, it will lift the paper stencil. Then I have a problem because the paper stencil is kind of delicate and it doesn't take well to being moved around too much. Okay, and just make sure more or less I have an even layer of paint. I get all the parts that are uncovered by the paper stencil. Okay. So now, this is an important part here. I tend to forget to do this. Before I pull the print, I have to remember to take the paper stencil off. And as you can see, the reason why I stick to these very simple shapes is they are easier to handle. As opposed to complicated shapes. Most likely will tear once I pull them off. Okay. So that is the second step, pulling off the stencils. And once again, I'm going to show you the last print that I pulled, and I'm going to lay this layer on top. So let's see what happens. And I deliberately chose a color which is the opposite of the yellow, which is like a bluish green, to create some tension. Sometimes when you use colors that are much too complementary, there's not much contrast, and so the print doesn't look very interesting. Okay, making sure that the paint transfers to the print. Okay, let's see what we got. Yeah, I'm very happy with this. You can see it's very effective when you have contrasting colors. Here we go. I smeared a little bit, but I'm going to doctor that. But here's the second layer, and I'll zoom in so you can see the detail, and you get the idea of why I use very simple circular shapes, so I can get this effect. Okay, so this is the first of the layer number 2. And since I usually work in series, I'm going to take advantage of this. This is what's called the ghost image. It's the secondary image. And usually you get, sometimes you can get very interesting effects from it. Now this is cadmium orange. This is a very vibrant contrast to what I have here. And I'll see if I can add some interesting highlight. Now what I'm hoping is this second layer of orange will pull up what's left underneath. And like I mentioned before, every time it's always a surprise. So this is the other print that was done earlier. This is one layer, and I'm going to do the second layer. And I'm applying a good amount of pressure and making sure that the ink is going to transfer. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. There are lots of factors. Okay, let's see what we got. I like this. It's a very complex texture, and usually a ghost print gives you this kind of image. Is what I'm looking for. And you can see the plate is really sticky, and I have to be careful when I pull this off. Here we go. Here's a close-up. I love the delicate textures, very subtle shading. You see that? And you can only create this in the printing process. That's why I like this so much. Is you can create very delicate and intricate textures. So this is print number 2. I'm going to put this aside again, let this dry. And then as a last part of my segment, I'm going to compare the 3. Even if they were made as a series, they have very different character, one compared to the other. So I'm going to use more of the oval shape. And some of these. Even these donut holes come in very handy. Okay, I'm going to press these down, make sure they don't dance around. And by the way, this plate is sitting on a sheet of acetate that the plate comes with when you buy it. I like to use it as an underlayer, so when I make adjustments I can shift this whichever way. If I don't use the acetate, it's very, very difficult to adjust the jelly plate because it's very sticky, and sometimes it doesn't follow what you want it to do. Okay, so for this third print, I'm I'm going to use aqua green again. Some of this green gray. And for contrast, I will apply some for a flash of color. And this is what I meant when I'm going too fast. The stencil gets messed up. So I gotta be cool and go slowly. Sometimes I get too excited. I have to remind myself before applying the paper, I have to take the stencils off. Let me just clean off the edges here, because I like clean edges. Okay. Time to peel this off. And as I mentioned before, the reason why I use very simple shapes is that they are manageable to handle. Otherwise, I would have a real problem taking off the stencils manually. Okay, now it's ready to be printed. So here is the third and last print. Make sure it's registered. And to apply a good amount of pressure so that the paint transfers to the plate, to the paper, I mean. And I have seen some other artists on YouTube. Sometimes they leave the paper for a while, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, just to make sure that the ink has soaked in. It's a nice effect. There you go. Here's a close-up. You can see the textures, and this is why I make sure I pick, for the second layer, I pick a contrasting color to the first one. Okay, that is print number 3. So let me allow this to dry, and in my last segment I will put all 3 prints next to each other, and you can see the differences. So I'll be right back. Okay, this is just a recap to all the 3 prints that were done, and they've dried by now. So this is one print. Let me just push aside these sprayers. Here's one, and here's the ghost print. This is my favorite, actually. And here's another one. This is a little more clear cut. So you have 1, 2, and 3. So I hope you enjoyed this little demonstration of paper stencils. I just want to show that you can always make your own stencils in your own style, and you don't have to depend on a store-bought stencil. And please share and like, and thank you for subscribing, and I hope to see you next time.